fellow comrades in the field of minority health and health disparities, addressing the needs and concerns of vulnerable populations. And because April's Minority Health Month, usually we would be gathering in wonderful spaces and having programs, but we did not want to leave that void and null. And we also wanted to address issues and concerns that were on the minds of our partners. So we are very fortunate today to be covering COVID-19 healthy coping strategies. And we have some wonderful experts that are going to be giving you empowerment tools and resources. And I can't thank each of them enough for all of them being a part of our panel today. So I am going to turn it over to Sunny, and she's going to introduce our speakers. And again, I thank you for joining. And at the end of the webinar, we'll do a little bit of announcements and things and resources and things that you can have that hopefully you have any questions or things, let us know. So thank you again for attending, and I hope you just give your all attention to these wonderful, beautiful women that are going to be representing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoinette. Good morning, everyone. Sunny Lou Williams here. Before we get into the speaker introduction, I'm going to do a quick overview of the GoToWebinar platform that you have in front of you. As you expand each of your sections by simply clicking on the little triangle here, it will automatically flip around and expand the polls section, the questions section, and also the handouts. Under the polls section today, we will be taking one poll during Nikisha's presentation on mental health coping strategies to take a audience poll of how you are coping with and utilizing positive mental health strategies today. On the question side, at any given time during our panelist presentation, you can expand the question function here and type in your questions on the content and any shared comments or additional information that you would like to provide. I will facilitate the questions section for today, and at the appropriate times of pauses during the presenters' presentations, I'll interject and provide the questions from the community. Additionally, we have a handouts function. All of the presentation slides, including the resources to be presented, are available here in PDF format. Nikisha, Mika, and Sandy have graciously provided all of their resources and information for you to distribute and disseminate within your communities to account for both national and state helplines and other resources to support the topics that we're going to be discussing today. Then last but not least, at the very bottom, there's a chat section. If you have any issues, if your audio drops, if you cannot see the next screen or any issues within GoToWebinar, go ahead and chat our lovely technical assistants for today, Liz Beckner, and she will provide you the responses and help you get reconnected. We have a total of 44 attendees and even more folks signing on right now. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I am very happy and thankful to introduce Ms. Nikisha Tolbert-Banks, who will be discussing today individuals' mental health and wellness and how it is impacted during a pandemic. During this overview, you will be learning productive factors to incorporate healthy coping skills into daily life. Nikisha Tolbert-Banks is the founder and chief executive officer of Duo Empowerment Services, a private mental health and life coaching practice in Indianapolis. Nikisha is a licensed clinical social worker, licensed clinical addictions counselor, certified laughter yoga leader, and a certified life empowerment coach. She has served as staff and adjunct faculty at Indiana University in the School of Social Work, as well as adjunct faculty for the University of Cincinnati. Nikisha serves on several local boards of organizations within Indiana and is currently the co-chair and active council member of the Region 5 Health Equity Council. She's a member of the Indiana Disproportionality Committee and serves as a mental health and wellness advocate throughout the community. Nikisha is the author of The Birdcage, which empowers individuals through the use of powerful quotes. Birdcage is now available on Amazon. In her spare time, Nikisha enjoys writing and spending time with her husband and children. We are so thankful for her time today, as she is still seeing patients throughout the pandemic, and for her time to share with us the impact of a pandemic on mental health. Nikisha, I'll turn it over to you.
All righty. Thank you, Sunny. Excuse me. And thank you, Antoinette, for allowing me to be here with everyone today. I first want to start out by saying I hope that everyone is well and healthy, and those in your circles. I understand as a frontline worker, being a social worker, still seeing many patients and trying to put as much information as we can out to help people about mental health, how critical this time is. And so I first just want to acknowledge everyone that's actually here joining us today. I just want to say thank you for taking time out to support Minority Health Month, but also just taking time out for yourself to be here sharing with us as community in our new format, right, on webinars. So thank you again for having me to be here today. So I'm going to be bringing to you just some information, hopefully some helpful tips for yourself, for those that you may work with, for those in your family, just about how we can interact with one another, take care of ourselves, do our mental health check-ins as we are in this current pandemic and crisis. I'll talk some about the impact of the pandemic on our mental health, but then also give you some helpful tools to take away today in how you're able to survive and thrive during this time. So next slide, please. So stress impacts everyone, and so can mental illness. When we talk about being in the current pandemic, everyone has felt stress of some sort in some type of a way. The thing to remember is that it's about how we cope with our stress, and what tools we can actually use, which may change from day to day. So things that you're doing right now to deal with your stress or just deal with concerns or issues you have may look completely different tomorrow than they did last week, than they will in the week or weeks to come. You also need to remember that you can deal with your stress. I'll give some helpful tips of ways to go about doing that. Many of you have probably already started, kicking into high gear in how you're getting through each day, how you're getting through your weeks. And I also want to talk some about the impact that this current pandemic has had on the mental health of many. Just some of the things that I've been seeing in working still with patients, some of the things that have been showing up in my own life personally, because I am not exempt from stress and folks around me that struggle with mental illness right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been seeing, and also some of the things to look out for with those that are in your circle, because crisis can bring about change. Crisis can bring about unwarranted stress that may exacerbate certain illnesses that people have, especially when we're talking about mental health being compromised, and those that already have mental illness. How is this impacting them, and how can we look to just maintain our mental health during this time? Next slide, please. All right, so you can see this person that's kind of, I say, scratching their head maybe. There's stress all around this person. When you think about your own self and where you are right now, what stressors do you have? And I want you to take a minute to just think about some of the stressors that you've had, that you've experienced, some that you may be experiencing now, and maybe even any concerns that you have. So take a minute to think about where you particularly are in this particular situation. So some of the things that have come up with people that I've talked to, people that, have shared different things with me during this current pandemic. I think probably one of the biggest for a lot of parents is working from home, having their children at home 24/7, e-learning, which I think has really put some people, on top of the mountain and ready to take a skip, because it is really a very difficult transition to help your children with school and navigating that whole change. Those who are frontline workers who are going out and still having to work in their respective areas, and whether or not they're bringing, this illness home to their loved ones has been a very significant stress for many. Financial stressors, right? So I'm not working as much. Some people not working at all. Some people who have lost employment. Some people's employment has decreased, and so their financial resources have decreased as well. Those financial stressors can also really impact a person and how they're coping during this season. Caring for elderly loved ones, or maybe only being able to communicate with them via phone or some type of a, FaceTime platform or something to that extent. So just worrying about the health and wellness of people in your circle. So you can think of probably many other stressors that you've endured and those around you, coworkers, friends, things that other people have shared. Those things can truly impact how we operate from day to day. You probably have seen or heard about the increase with depression, right? So I call it physical distancing, because I think that social distancing says that we need to socially isolate ourselves, and I don't believe that that's the case. So as a provider, I'm encouraging people to practice socializing, even though it looks different, right? We may have to FaceTime or Zoom or Google Hangouts, but to have that type of socialization is critical because we're still connecting with people. But the physical distancing does have to happen. So a lot of people who were used to going to work and seeing coworkers and casually going out to the store or to restaurants or to the gym or whatever social environments we placed ourselves in prior to the pandemic, a lot of those things have ended, for now. And so depression has started to increase significantly. Anxiety, again, talking about having to wear masks when we go out, if for those essential things, to the grocery store, for people that still have health concerns and they do have to do check-ins with their physicians if they cannot do some type of a telehealth. Anxieties of family members who are now ill and they're on ventilators and respirators and things like that in the hospitals. For those that have passed away, we're seeing that, that increase in depression and anxiety. PTSD, I think that we've only at this point seen just kind of the tipping point of this. Obviously, there will be an aftermath and there will be a lot of people who potentially will have PTSD from the things that they've experienced. And the frontline workers, a lot of them with the conditions that we've seen that we've never seen before in the healthcare field. Suicide, something to always know that can potentially happen. Suicide, depression, left untreated, can ultimately lead to suicide. What will that look like moving forward? I hate to even think about it as, a mental health provider. Excuse me, but I want to talk about some of the things that you yourself can look out for, but then also being aware of for others that are in your circles. We've seen an increase in people, obviously, with sadness, worry, guilt, loneliness, right? So being in social isolation, for those people that live alone, you don't have other people there with you. Helplessness. There's nothing that I can do to help the situation. The number of people that have talked about their loved ones going into the hospital and they cannot be there. They physically cannot be there. They're given a card with a doctor or a nurse's name so that they can actually call and get updates on their loved one. So they feel helpless. Hopeless. There's no hope. Nothing's going to get better, or this situation hasn't gotten better. My home life hasn't gotten better. Will there be any change to where things will get better? So these are a lot of the worries and concerns that people have right now and things that people are holding on to. So I don't put all of this information out here to stress you or to make you feel worse, but having an awareness of where people are, maybe where you are, is important to say, this is what I'm feeling today in this moment. And welcoming that feeling, that emotion, that thought, because it's okay for all of us to feel sad, to be worried, to have some type of anger about what's happening or what has happened in your life. All of those feelings and emotions are normal, but it's about what we do with those feelings and emotions once we've embraced them that makes the difference. So what I want you to do is I want everybody to just stop for a second and take a deep breath. All right. A lot of what we're dealing with right now is heavy. We've never been here in this space before, and we hope that we never have to be in this space again. But we are in this space. So I want us to all acknowledge where we are. And then I want us to always remember that we have the ability in the moment to make a choice about how we're going to get through this moment. Sometimes it's the day, sometimes it's the moment. So remembering to take some of these deep breaths that I've asked you to take will be very helpful. What does breathing do? Breathing helps to calm us down. So I want to give you that little tool that you can do day in and day out. No, it's not going to make everything go away. No, it's not going to, decrease everything 100%. But in that moment, taking a deep breath and just taking a moment to allow your body to relax is going to be key in how we move forward and how we get through this pandemic, with just another helpful way of just helping us to be a little bit more calm. All right. So take another deep breath. All right, thank you. Next slide. All right, so stress warning signs and symptoms. I've really just talked about a lot of those on the previous slide. I want to talk maybe some to people that are maybe taking care of children or are checking in on, it could be neighbors or loved ones who are alone, things that you may notice that could be a potential, maybe I'll say a red flag for you to do maybe some more check-ins, or even to say, I think it's time for this person to get some type of help or assistance. Behavioral symptoms, cognitive symptoms. So I'll use children as an example. Children, youth, some of the things that I've seen and had parents to kind of monitor. Sometimes we forget that children and youth are going through this pandemic as well, and they are impacted just as much by this as we are. For a lot of children, they're missing their friends, they're missing that time to socialize at school. For the young adults and teens that I've talked to, they miss lunch and they miss time being able to just connect with their friends in school. So now they're either FaceTiming, TikToking is the big thing, or Instagramming and different things like that to make these connections. So when you hear things like behavioral changes, children that are sleeping a lot more, they don't want to get up, they have lack of energy, and this can be for adults as well. Not as bright or bubbly as they have been. Crying more. So increase in crying, increase in anger, maybe a lack of disrespect. So saying things that they wouldn't normally say, just maybe getting in more fights with people in the home, arguments, things of that nature. Those are things that we want to look out for, signs and symptoms, even with loved ones. If we know that Antoinette, I'll use for an example, Antoinette's my sister, and I usually talk to Antoinette every day. Now all of a sudden I'm calling Antoinette, I'm FaceTiming, I'm sending text messages, and I may hear from her every other day, every 2 or 3 days. That is a change that I would want to make sure that I look into, because we've gone from every day, 2 or 3 times a day, to maybe once every 2 or 3 days, or maybe once a week. That would be different for someone that I'm used to having that same type of connection with. So be mindful of what's going on around you. I know with so much going on, and many of us are probably busier now than we've been before, but just being mindful of some of the changes that you may notice in others, and doing a quick check-in. Sending that text message to that person that lives alone to say, hey, just thinking about you. Hey, I miss your laugh. Let's connect on Google Hangouts tonight, or something to that extent. So we also, while we're supporting ourselves through this pandemic, we want to remember that there are other people too who could benefit from just a kind word, a positive word, or some type of support that we can offer. And I understand we've got a lot of physical limitations, but the thing to remember in the midst of a pandemic and a crisis is, what's in my control? What can I control at this moment that I can do? What is it that I can actually do? Some days you're going to have more bright ideas than others, and that's okay. But just remember that whatever is in your control, do that. Okay. Next slide, please. Take care of yourself. This is probably the most critical piece to maneuvering through a crisis. And this, again, will be something that changes from day to day. Again, I said it before, what may work today may not have worked last week and may not work next week. But right now in this moment, what do I need to do to ensure that I'm taking care of myself? And Sunny, I don't know if we're able to have people to chat in about some of the things that they do to take care of themselves, but I would love to hear what others do to take care of themselves. Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. So for everyone that is participating, we've got 51 attendees today. There is an option to maximize the questions, and please share what you have been doing during the stay-at-home period to take care of yourself. For those that are interested, there's also a poll that I'll launch on how are you protecting your mental health during this time. So you can choose to either directly chat in, or you can also utilize the poll in progress. Pam Clark has identified that she has a family conference call every Saturday night. Fantastic. Chantel has identified that she goes on a walk 3 times a week.
Nice.
Amanda has chatted in that she takes her dog for a walk or just to walk a lap around the neighborhood. Felicia has chatted, she is trying to stay positive and checking on others at her job, hosting weekly self-care games with my team. Fantastic. Elaine, yoga by Zoom, catching up on reading and movies. Very cool.
Awesome.
Paris says that she's been dancing off of Instagram.
Yes, I love it.
Margarita is doing Zoom Bible studies with various groups.
Nice.
And for the polls in progress, there were multiple selections that you could utilize. 62% of the team said, you're simply keeping healthy by reminding yourselves that this is a temporary period of isolation.
Absolutely.
30+% say remembering that your effort is helping others in the community. 70+% is staying virtually connected with friends, family. 52% are engaging in healthy activities. And 44% are trying to eat healthy and maintaining regular exercise and activity. And again, those percentages are widely variable due to the ability for respondents to select multiple choices. So it looks like everybody's doing a good job for the most part staying virtually connected and reminding ourselves that this is just a temporary period.
Yeah.
Gwen has chatted in, I love this, making TikTok videos with her son.
Yes.
Michelle is taking her dog for daily walks and doing Pilates on Zoom.
Nice.
Paris added also she's cooking more than ever. Shelby is accumulating positive experiences and weekly therapy through telehealth.
Nice.
Pamela is doing duo dating.
Cool.
I don't know what that is. Pamela, if you could explain that further. And Rebecca is doing painting.
Nice. I just learned that I am a painter only with instruction a few years ago. And so that's probably become one of my most favorite things to do in my spare time is to paint. It is very therapeutic for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, and I love the TikTok videos with your kids. I think that's increased tremendously. Just being able to take this time, I think for a lot of people that I'm hearing, to do things that sometimes we didn't have time to do. And so I want to commend all of you that sent something in, and for those of you that are doing things, to just take time out for yourself, to connect with loved ones, to connect with coworkers in a way that maybe we haven't been able to in the past because we've been so busy managing work and personal lives. The joke I make now is I spend a lot more time outdoors because I am able to maneuver being home some days. But I'm getting to know a lot more of my neighbors, and I'm like, do you live in this neighborhood, or are you just walking your animals over here, like walking your dog? And they'll laugh and we laugh. And it's just getting to know the people truly that are around me. But then I also have been joking about the fact that our pets, the movie The Secret Life of Pets, these animals were just, wanting their owners to come back home. And so now I kind of joke about these dogs have been getting more walks than they probably ever have, because a lot of them have probably been crated and different things like that while their owners are working. And so now they're home and able to share the space. So it's very cool to hear that you guys are doing some really positive things and great things to help take care of yourself, to embrace this season, even though it is not easy by any means, but understanding that your self-care is really, really critical. So I want to commend you all for that. One of the things, and I know that Sunny has added a handout into the handout section. I have a Mentally Healthy Me Pandemic and Beyond Survival Tips sheet. There's 8 helpful tips that I'll just review quickly. Oh, there it is. Sunny, you're good. Thank you. 8 tips that are helpful to just remember. I did want to say, and it's on the handout, these tips are not to replace the consult of your physician or a mental health provider. So if you have true concerns about your mental health or even your physical health and some things that you're experiencing, make sure that you consult with one of your physicians or find a physician to address those things that you're concerned about. So the first tip is just be regular. And by be regular, that means trying to have as much of a regular schedule each day as possible. And yes, again, that may change from day to day, depending upon, who's in your home, what you have to manage. But at one point in time, and I'll say this embarrassingly, because many of you can probably, agree with this. I asked myself, what day is it? And did I shower today or yesterday, or was that the day before? Because yoga pants have become my jam. Like, yoga pants are my thing, and I'm like, I can never depart from them. I've been able to wear them every day. So being regular, meaning let's get up, let's take a shower, let's maneuver around like we have been doing prior to the pandemic, which gives us a little bit more of regularity, and that's within our control. Having, your regular meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever floats your boat. I heard somebody say that they're doing yoga virtually, which is awesome. A lot of trainers and gyms and health facilities are doing a lot of their stuff online. So being able to jump online and get some type of physical exercise, supporting those that are around you. So I heard somebody say they have a family kind of connection every Saturday night, which is awesome. So just making sure that the things that you did before, if you're able to do them, they may look a little different now, but go ahead and do those things to make sure that you're regular. The next one is insert your creative gene. Again, I kind of just talked about this. You're going to have to be creative in how you maneuver right now, how you work, right? Because you may have more people in your home. So you're working from home. You have to be creative about how you make that happen. How you interact with your coworkers, things that you do that are going to give you a boost throughout the course of your day. One of the ones that I put in here because it's my favorite and we've been doing it at home is turning on your favorite music and getting some bebop doo-wop in, right? So whether you're singing, whether you're dancing, make sure that you're incorporating your creative gene to make it through this time. The third one is stay informed and know when to disconnect. Staying informed is critical. What's going on in our community, in our country, in the world right now? That's important for us to know, to stay abreast of how this COVID pandemic is really impacting all of us. But the other thing to realize for our own mental health and sanity is to know when to disconnect. I hear a lot of people talking about how frustrated they're becoming with, things that are being posted on social media and things that they're seeing, things that they're reading, things that they're hearing. You have to know when to disconnect. So if you take a week and you're not on social media, or maybe you only watch, the news from this time to this time, so 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day, you know best for you when you've reached your capacity. So respect that and make sure that you are taking that time to disconnect if you need it to. The fourth one is eat and drink responsibly. We've talked about, and I think it was on the poll that Sunny shared, is, what are you eating? What are you drinking? Are you, being responsible with that? Probably filling up on a lot of sugar every day may not be the best. So throw in some veggies, make sure you're staying hydrated, drinking water, and other healthy choices. I always throw in, because I'm an addiction specialist, so monitoring your alcohol intake. During times of crisis, a lot of times people don't realize that they turn to alcoholic beverages, and some people drugs and different things like that, to cope and get through. So just be aware of what you're consuming. I threw in for the chocolate lovers. I've got lots of girlfriends who think chocolate is the best thing ever, and that's what they're using to cope, through this time. So offering yourself that special treat on occasion isn't a bad thing. So just make sure that you're aware of what you're consuming and how often. Chit chat is where it's at. Make sure that you've got that support system, that person or people that you're able to talk to. Yes, hooray for yoga pants and chocolate. I saw that in the chat. But chit-chatting, making sure that you are able to talk about and process how you feel, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, whether it's through journaling. We talked about the painting earlier. So painting, one of the ways that I relieve stress is cooking. So sometimes I'll have, my husband to sit in a space in our kitchen, and while I'm cooking, I'm talking. So that helps me to be able to process and talk about things that I'm concerned about, or, positive things that I've heard or, have happened. So make sure that you have an outlet to talk during this time. It's really going to be critical. Powering down, that's number 6. Just like, computers, tablets, phones, all of that stuff, we need to take time to power down as well. I think on the poll that Sunny did, there was one that talked about sleep. How are you sleeping? There are several patients that I've had who have said, well, I'm up till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Why? Because they don't have that regular schedule anymore with work. And so they're sleeping until, noon, 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of children are as well. So powering down, making sure you're taking time to just relax, taking time to breathe, taking time for you to just give your body the break away, especially with so many of us on Zoom meetings and calls and working, at this computer screen. Make sure that you take that time away to give your body a break as well, and your mind. That helps to keep us mentally healthy, and gives us that little boost that we need to get re-energized. Gratitude. Gratitude always helps. I heard somebody mention earlier just sending an encouraging word to a friend or family members, or whatever the case may be. So remembering that gratitude truly does make a difference. Even if it's an e-card, again, using your creativity and how you show gratitude to others. You can even do it within your own home. I'm conscious of the people that live in the home with me right now, that I say thank you, or letting, my husband know, like, I appreciate you, because we have to share the space, and there's a lot of moving parts in our home right now. So just telling people I appreciate you and thank you, it goes a long way. So remember to do that. And then the final one is, it's okay to laugh. You heard Sunny mention that I'm a certified laughter yoga leader. One of the things that's important, it's important in our household, it's important for me personally, is to laugh. This month is International Laughter Month. So there's a lot of laughter going on. And there's a lot that we could, have to be sad about, down about. We've talked about all of that. But in the moments that we can take away, to just laugh and give ourselves that boost, I would recommend that you do that you just take a moment to watch that funny movie, to call that silly friend, to think about a memory of a time where you laughed uncontrollably. I mean, like the Santa Claus giggle where your body's moving up and down, you've got tears streaming from your face. You may be a snorter when you get really, really excited when you laugh. It's okay, to have those moments during this time, because that is what's in your control as well. So one of the things that I would like to do, Sunny, if we could, is I just want us to take a minute to just laugh. So I don't know if we can unmute our attendees or not. Is that possible?
We can, yes. Let me do a global audio unmute.
And all that we're going to do for like 30 seconds is everybody's just going to laugh. And the thing about it is it doesn't matter. We can't see you. So it doesn't matter how you laugh, if you snort, if you start streaming tears, none of this matters. We just want to take a moment to laugh. All right. It's going to give us a mental boost. All right.
So everyone, you have been globally unmuted, but at the top of your toolbar, you'll still need to click on the green microphone icon. And once it is available, it will turn green. So I see about half of the folks have unmuted. All right. Nikisha, would you like to lead us in a joke or a laugh or a chant?
Well, yeah, this is the tip of laughter yoga. And so all that we're going to do is we're just going to laugh.
Oh my goodness.
It was funny for us. Goodness gracious, oh man. So
Wow.
you all can see the power of this laughter, right? It connects us all in a way that, 52 people are able to connect with laughter this morning. And this is an experience that you won't forget. It's connected us in a way that we probably needed this morning and we didn't even realize. I mean, just in 30 seconds, I'm already feeling better than I was kind of going into my day and starting my day. So just remember the importance of your mental health. Make sure that you're doing daily check-ins. Where am I today? How am I feeling? What am I thinking? Because those are going to be the critical things that we need to ensure that we're on the right track. If you ever have questions about your mental health, your wellness, how you're feeling, make sure that you reach out to a professional and get the help that you need. Sometimes just talking it out, whether it's with a therapist, a counselor, your primary care provider, sometimes just talking it out can put you in a much better space to understand that you're on the right track, or just to validate that what you're feeling is okay to feel. So I just want to say, I know that at the bottom of that handout, there are some resources for you. Up-to-date information on COVID, obviously go to the CDC, the National Suicide Prevention Line, a crisis text line. to write love on her arms is mental health resources. And my contact information is also at the bottom there. But again, I just want to say thank you all for joining me this morning to be here and to share a little bit with you about how to try to stay mentally healthy during this time of crisis, during the pandemic. There are also some resources there, so you will have those as well. And make sure to share the resources with those in your community and those around you, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and we are community, and we're here to help one another. So thank you.
Nikisha, thank you so much. What fantastic, sincere messaging and such important reminders for us as we continue to cope with COVID-19. I wanted to share Johnny Washington's comment here about the laughter experience that we just did. He writes, "The laughter was great. My family stopped doing what they were doing to come in to check on me, asking if I was okay. He said he needed this as he just experienced 2 deaths in his family." What a great way to do a release. And thank you for leading us through that. We're going to open the platform up now for any questions from the audience for Nikisha.
And I wanted to acknowledge Johnny. Johnny, it's good to hear from you. Johnny and I actually went through our master's program together, so I know exactly who she is, and I'm sorry for your loss.
And Felicia writes in, "Thank you for the presentation. It was right on time."
Awesome. Thank you.
Multiple responses regarding just thanking you for your great presentation and the time that you've taken. Leanne thanks you for the great information, and Brenda asks for her contact information. So I'm going to advance the screen, and this is Nikisha Tolberbank's contact information and wonderful sites for more information on her books, her business, and to connect with her on Facebook through Duo Empowerment Services as well. There's a question from Patrice, and when you notice a change in a child's behavior, what would you suggest as parents do as a first step?
Yeah, I always say take the time to sit down and talk with your child, and just say, you know, you can talk to us about anything. Let us know like what you're thinking, what you're feeling, because again, this is new for everyone, and so children may not necessarily know how to talk about what they're thinking or feeling. So just giving them the space, creating that healthy space for them to just talk about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're concerned about would be very, very helpful. And then obviously from the answer that you get from them, if it's something that you feel may be out of your scope of parenting, or if it could be something that they just need their own person to talk about, you may want to consider looking for a child therapist or counselor for them to connect with as well. Because again, some children may be having a hard time adjusting to kind of their school life and their norm being halted, and now they're home 24/7.
Fantastic. Well, there have been an outpouring of additional thank yous, awesomes, so appreciate your time, etc., from all of the wonderful audience members today. Nikisha, we greatly thank you for your time and this positive messaging. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunny.
Great. Well, folks, we're going to do a transition very quickly, and I'm going to present a little message from our sponsor. The Minority Health Month webinars have been brought to you by FieldMed. FieldMed is a technology provider of case management software for home visiting and field support personnel. In addition to sponsoring the Minority Health Month webinar series, FieldMed is providing 90 days of free software access for qualifying organizations. So as we go through, I'm going to transition over quickly to the quick 30-second commercial featuring FieldMed.
Are you looking for a solution to help?
Wonderful. Well, thanks to FieldMed again for sponsoring the Minority Health Month webinars. We're going to now transition to our next speaker, Mika Jones. Mika is going to provide us an overview of domestic violence protective factors and resources, and specifically unique social conditions of why domestic violence is increasing during this time of pandemic. As Nikisha spoke about healthy mental health, positive behaviors, and overall resources in ensuring individuals are seeking positive mental health. We're going to take a little bit of a turn and discuss resources for both domestic violence and child abuse in our second portion of today's webinar. So without further ado, let me introduce Mika Jones. Mika is the program specialist on the prevention team at the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Mika earned her MS in Human Services from Argosy University and a BS in Criminal Justice and Criminology from Ball State University. Mika has held various positions within state government and the non-for-profit sectors, including child abuse prevention, correctional and reentry programs, and juvenile delinquency prevention. Mika is an active member of Ending Violence Together, the statewide violence prevention collective impact steering committee. Mika is a co-chair of the Indiana Disproportionality Committee, a participant of the Commission of Improving the Status of Children in Indiana's Equity, Inclusion, and Cultural Competence Work Group. We're so thankful to have Mika today to share with us much needed resources to distribute within the Minority Health Partners community to support our broader community that may be facing issues with domestic violence and concerns there. So as I transition screens here, I'd like to just remind everyone to please utilize the GoToWebinar tools for any questions to our speakers and the chat function for any technical support issues. All right, Mika, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, good morning, everyone. How's my sound? Okay, I thought I heard echo.
Sounds great.
Good. Well, thank you so much for letting me come here and talk about a very important topic. And I really appreciate that Nikisha came first and talked about, our own mental health and how important it is to support ourselves during this trying time. And like Sunny said, my name is Tamika Jones. I am with the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence. If you're not familiar with what we do a wide range of activities, such as primarily providing technical support and technical assistance and support to domestic programs throughout the state. We advocate for public policy to support domestic violence and survivors. We provide direct legal services, and we for immigrants legal services program and our satellite attorneys programs. We have a deaf and hard of hearing program and many, many, many more things. But what we don't do is we're not a shelter and we're not a direct service provider for advocacy. So sometimes people don't understand that about us, and I just wanted to put it out there. And what we do on prevention, that's what I'll talk about more today, how we see our job as preventionists and how we see the condition of violence thriving in communities. So there's unique conditions that make minority populations more susceptible to domestic violence. And when we speak today, those same conditions are probably what is leading to the increase of the COVID virus. So we'll just talk a little bit about that. So both domestic violence and interpersonal violence, those terms are interchangeable. They're very, very hard to talk about. So please do practice what Nikisha spoke about, and even after this webinar, some self-care, some laughter, something to take your head out of these hard things that are happening, especially on the wake of like the death of Officer Leith and other stories that are constantly coming on the news of domestic violence and violence in homes that are causing death. And we just want to keep those people in our hearts and minds, and keep ourselves sane while we deal with our own problems. So, so with COVID-19 and the social distancing and the staying at home is pretty much fueling the opportunity for violence to happen. And there's there's less opportunity for recourse to support those situations. Next slide, please. I want to talk with you about how we see primary prevention at the Coalition and what we do for our work on a daily basis. If you see the pyramid in front of you, you see there's 3 levels of prevention. Tertiary is when you are dealing with something that has already happened and you don't want it to happen again. And secondary is that immediate response for the short-term consequence. And primary prevention is we see it as whole population intervention for systemic problems that exist, and we don't want it to ever happen. We just want to avoid violence to have no opportunity to be there. If you are familiar with the social ecological model, we focus on the outer level of that model. We focus on the community and societal level responses. So when we talk about the public health approach to identifying the problem of violence in communities, we recognize that there are plenty of disparities. And I want to talk about those disparate occurrences that affect multiple social conditions, and that includes domestic and sexual violence that are specific to minority populations. So domestic violence, it's identified as a willful intimidation of physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and other abusive behaviors that are part of a pattern of abuse and control of one partner against another. It can happen frequent, or the frequency can vary to often or rare. So it still is domestic violence, it's still interpersonal violence. And we know that it occurs among all groups of people, male, female, rich, poor. It doesn't choose to be, no one is exempt. However, some of the differences that communities experience with their disadvantage, the motivation to exercise power over others is different. Disempowered populations, disenfranchised groups use that power to overcompensate for their disempowerment, their disrespect, which is different from people who have privilege, who may use that power to exercise, to reinforce that privilege over someone else. So when we talk about minority populations, we know that there's an increase of poverty in the overall population. There's increase in living in high concentrated areas with less safe schools, and there's lower paying jobs. There's a higher rate of incarceration. There's there's systemic racism that is fueled with all kinds of different ways that minorities deal with every day. There's untreated, undiagnosed mental illness due to cultural reasons why or opportunity to health care or medical care. There's for immigrant populations, there's fear of deportation, and there's often language barriers. So when we talk about disempowered, disvalued, and disrespected, there's an increase of all those things when we talk about minority populations. Okay, and then when we talk about what's happened with COVID-19, that all of those things are amplified for everyone, and we know that those on the bottom experience it greater. So staying at home, the loss of the jobs that we had, people on the front lines, jobs working throughout this virus without proper protections, fear of contracting diseases that's out there, right now, overworked, underpaid, and just all of those anxieties, fears, and frustrations that come with this virus. So, and nationally, domestic violence is a problem. I think the 40% of people say that they've experienced some type of stalking, domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment throughout their lifetime, 40% of women. And Indiana is, the statistics are still high. Actually, in Marion County, is 8 times the national average of domestic violence calls, even prior to the pandemic. Next slide, please. So with that, there's been a surge in calls. You've heard it on the news, you've read it in newspapers or magazines or on webs of how the call centers are saying they have an increase. I hear up to 15% increase, but there's less recourse because not as many arrests are being made. More people are being released from jails and prison with non-violent offenses, and sometimes stalking may fit in those, or things that can't be defined as violence to law enforcement for those reasons. And so there's calls to the national hotline is up, domestic violence hotline is up to 15%. So, and when we look at domestic violence, we know that the higher rates of domestic violence happen primarily in minority populations, but there is a specific, Black women specifically have some data that says that we're even more at danger. We're the higher risk of homicide during domestic violence cases, and higher risk of sexual assault, higher risk of throughout the lifetime, it's a higher risk of many forms of violence, and we see probably why. If we look at what we said before, the conditions are set up to really reinforce power over, to protect, disempowerment. And right now, abuse is looking a little different. People are withholding contact with others in a more aggressive way. Even like disinfectant and hand sanitizers have been reported as a way to disabuse, providing misinformation to control others in the home. And those are methods that have been used to just continue to control people while they're in the home with people all day that could be their abusers. So, and then we look at COVID-19, how it's disproportionately affecting African-American communities. Being only 9.8% of this population in Indiana, COVID-19 has at least 18.5% of Black Americans or African-Americans have at least 18.5% of the COVID diagnosis. And I say at least because it's over 19% of unknown racial and ethnic backgrounds. So we know at least 18.5% of those people are Black and African American. And we talk about the deaf demographic, it's almost 20% of the deaf demographic of all COVID patients are African American and Black. So, and again, some of those things have been reported that makes COVID susceptible to Black people susceptible to COVID are those increased poverty and living in concentrated communities and working at those frontline jobs and those higher rates of incarceration and institutionalization. And then there's the distrust that has happened when I think there were things saying in the beginning that it couldn't happen to us, or just the distrust on the information that we're getting on the news. So we are in a crisis upon a crisis with the domestic violence in the homes. And so when we look at it as preventionists, we wonder what primary prevention measures can we use to mitigate these disparities and to create environments where violence does not thrive. Next slide, please. So we conducted a survey of about 91 diverse participants and created a report. You can find it on our website. And So we asked survivors what did they need to feel supported after trying to get back on their feet after domestic violence. And these are the 5 things that came first. Those are the top 5 things. They needed housing, safe, affordable housing. They needed assistance. We needed an expanded safety net to support people as they, lose jobs or, need child food support or any other support like that. They needed financial stability. They needed to have jobs that paid enough for them to live. And then they needed acceptance. So we needed to not be judged and to realize that people have multiple reasons to stay with their survivor, with their abuser, and that we all need to that when people come to you for help, the judgment has kept them with their survivor instead of helping them be prepared to leave. So these are the same things that we need to do to protect people who may, before violence ever occurs. To have a safe, nurturing environments, to have environments where violence does not thrive, and where people can have a wide range of life expectations, where they live, work, and play. We want to provide housing that is safe and affordable. We want to provide financial stability. As we see with this COVID virus, one of the first things they've done was realize, how can we keep sustainable financial stability for everybody the best we can, with increasing the amount that people are getting for wages being lost, and the stimulus package. Those things are needed all the time for many populations of people. The safety nets need to be expanded so no one has to be in a situation where they have no other outcome and they feel hopeless. And so we advocate for these things to policy, because we know that they always are needed, and they're needed now more than ever. But we recognize that they are needed. It's a way to be proactive, because we know that another thing will happen, another crisis, hopefully not another pandemic. And we want the most vulnerable people to not be, continue to be the most vulnerable people, simply because of social and systemic barriers that keep them from accessing quality of life. So that's how we can stop violence from happening in the first place. Those are some of the measures that we work at with the prevention team. We work to advocate for legislation and policies that support these type of environments, from increase of the minimum wage to looking at ways to support people when they were housing, from not being evicted, all kind of programs that just look at how to make people's lives whole and support it in all levels of need. So just a second. So the good thing is that we have been resilient throughout our history as minorities and Black people and African American people, and this too is a thing that we will survive. And history has shown that we are resilient and continually will be. And just continue to practice the self-care that Nikisha has talked about. And even though we focus as an agency on, even though we are preventionists in the primary prevention team, and this is the work we do, we are prioritizing those who need the resource now. They're in crisis now. And so we have resources that are available. So even throughout this pandemic, even though domestic violence programs are small businesses trying to figure out how to keep going, and the residential areas are questionable how we can support them, and the stay-at-home orders. They are being creative in how we can provide services to people through this crisis, and they are available. Next slide, please. So if you go to our website, the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence, there is a host of resources specific to COVID virus that really just supports those stable basics that you need to thrive and answers all the questions. And there's tabs that identify how you, whatever you need. And it's a great resource to just go through, whether you have a violent situation in your home at all, just to understand how you can best support yourself throughout this virus. And then we have in there too, if you need help, if you're in crisis, we have a list of all of the shelters and programs throughout the state and what kind of program they do. Some places are shelters, some places provide advocacy, and some do both. And so that list is in there too. There's a 24-hour state hotline, and that is always available. It's in Spanish. It's a call for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. There's ways to get help. And if you can't speak safely, there's a website that you can chat, or you can text for help. There's the national hotline number, and then of course there's a sexual assault national hotline number as well. These resources are available. I urge you to have them nearby, be able to share with someone, you know, if you feel like they need it. And most importantly, that we all stay connected and we all love each other and ourselves well. You know, check on people you care about, you know, check on your neighbor the best we can. That's something we all can do every day, is just continue to be supportive of each other as humans, and understanding that we have, this is, like Lakeisha said, we've never done this before, and we all hope that we never have to do this again. But throughout it all, people are going through very hard times, and these hard times lead to depression, mental illness, all the domestic violence, and doesn't lead to mental illness, it exacerbates a mental illness. And so we just all want to be very, very supportive of each other. We also want to be aware of what legislation and policies are out there that continue to support people in general. So people can always, as voters and citizens, we have impact on what legislations and what policies are being implemented. And so we want to be active players in that. If we believe that stable basics in housing opportunities and above minimum wage paying and maternal rights and family leave policies are things that can make your mental health, your physical health, your home, your finances a safer place for you, then it will definitely make the same thing safer for someone who's at risk of all kinds of social conditions. So we want to be diligent in that as well. We have imminent problems that we have the resources support, but we have to do something to stop the occurrence in the first place. That's all I have today. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions?
Mika, thank you so much. It is such difficult information to share, but thank you so much for your service and of course for the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence, of all the resources that are being provided. It's incredibly difficult as we changed gears from laughing about, literally laughing, talking about yoga pants and chocolate and our own individual best practices for mental health, to then switch gears to consider what victims of domestic violence, what their lives are like right now, when in consideration that they are sheltering with their abusers. I think the resources page is the most important. So we're just going to continue to leave that up here as we entertain questions from the audience, that in our communities, with our clients, even within our own families, if there are incidences of domestic violence occurring, Mika has provided this excellent resource list for both state and also national hotlines for reporting And of course, also a call to action ongoing about legislative changes in support of our domestic violence survivors when it comes to assistance, housing, and all of those factors that are needs once a individual can actually seek residency or seek support away from their abusers. So really, really powerful information. Thank you very much for that. Questions for Mika from the audience? Yes, Brenda Majors is coming in with a question, and we'll give her a few minutes to chat that through. We've seen a couple of hands raised as well, so please go ahead and chat in your questions. We see quite a few folks typing, so I'll just give them a few minutes here. Brenda has an excellent question. Brenda has asked what happens when children are being abused and cannot leave their environment, along with what's happening with spouses and partners.
Well, that's a great question. And Sandy is going to talk about child abuse prevention today. She's right after me. That might be a better question for her to answer.
Great segue to Sandy. Yes, we have quite a few comments on great talk, incredibly informative information. Thank you for the resources. Several more thank yous. Any questions for Mika, specifically about domestic violence, social conditions that fuel domestic violence, or any additional clarifications on protective factors or resources? Oh, we've got a few folks still typing in, so we'll give them a few seconds here. Oh, these are more comments of thank you, very informative. And will the slides be available? Yes, the slides are available with the resources from Mika's last slide there are all available in the handout section. So if you expand the handout sections, you can download and directly access all of those resources. We have another great question from Brenda. And the question is, what happens when the shelters are full? Are there other resources available?
That is all a work in progress, and people are working diligently now to figure out opportunities that will be helpful. Prior to now, that hasn't been as big of an issue because shelters kind of work in a collective system where we would work in other counties if there weren't beds available in one county. But right now, I think they're looking to partner with empty hotels, different ways to be really creative right now so we can keep social distancing people and also provide them shelter in a safe space. So I think that those are all being creative based on need. We're just doing the best we can.
I think that's a phenomenal feedback that local hotel partners are providing that type of assistance. I think that just is encouragement to all of our minority health partners on the call today to reach out to non-traditional resources, because everybody is in it together during this time and looking to help and collaborate how we can. That's a wonderful example.
Okay, well, I thank you all for having me today. I really thank the Minority Health Partners for asking me to be here. I was a little nervous about talking about domestic violence when it's just hitting so close to home every day right now, and just making sure that it was a comfortable conversation to have. And I appreciate your time. And please, I didn't leave my contact information, but I'm sure we can get it to you if you want to reach out to me individually. I appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone.
Mika, thank you so much. There were a couple of additional questions. If you have availability, otherwise we can certainly connect you with the, okay, great. Paris asks, do you think mental abuse is just as bad as physical abuse, or do you consider that as correlated.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, the definition of domestic violence and interpersonal violence can be physical, it can be mental, it can be economic, it can be social. It's a wide range of ways to control someone else.
Great feedback. And Claire Hubbard asks, how can I address domestic violence in senior communities during this crisis?
Are we talking about the same process in homes, or are we talking about in residential care? Because the same thing goes, senior community, everyone has the same basic needs: to be connected to people, to have their social things taken care of, their medical and mental health things provided and taken care of. Those are the best ways to provide protective factors for any person, including our elder community. So staying in touch and engaged the best way you know how. And I know you have to be even more creative with some elder community people, because they may not be savvy with social media or webcams, etc. But the best we can to just stay engaged in people's lives and connect us as people is the best thing we can do as lay people. And as if you think there's abuse or neglect in the home, and you can always decide to call an advocate and through our website, you can find, or through the hotlines, and tell them your concerns and maybe get some help that way.
That's wonderful. Thank you for the questions from the audience. We've gotten several requests for your contact information. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that with me, Mika, I can post it so that everybody has access to it before the end of the call. And then we can certainly update the slides as well to include your contact information, the resources.
Okay, I'll get it to you in a minute.
Mika, thank you so much. Thanks for the great questions to the audience. Difficult content to discuss, but really important information to share to ensure that our individuals in our communities that are at risk are provided the information and disseminated in such a way that ensures that they are getting supportive and protective services immediately. Mika, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
As we transition from the discussion on domestic violence and how to support individuals coping with mental health issues leading to a further trauma, we are discussing now and transitioning to Sandy Runkle to discuss child abuse. Sandy is going to discuss with us 4 types of child maltreatment, how to understand both behavioral and physical indicators of child maltreatment, reporting responsibilities, and prevention strategies. In our discussions with the minority health partners leading up to the creation of the webinar series, we specifically identified domestic violence and also child abuse as specific topics to address because of the limited interaction of those high-risk parties. Domestic violence partners are sheltering together. Children are no longer attending schools, which are some of the highest reportable incidences come from teachers, school administrators, staff that identify and observe concerning child either behaviors or concerning observations of potential harm towards the child. And so during this time, as we're all sheltering in place and staying at home, resources and connecting to our community pertaining to these high-risk populations is even more important. It is my pleasure to introduce Sandy Runkle to discuss these objectives with us today and to share with us some additional resources to help as we identify potential concerns within the community and be able to share those resources with those community members. Sandy Runkle is the Director of Programs at Prevent Child Abuse Indiana, a division of the Villages, and she has been Director of Programs since 2000. She has both teaching and training experience, as well as experience working with youth and working in the child welfare system. She received her bachelor's degree in psychology from Northern Arizona University and her master's degree in social work from Marywood University. She has provided over 1,000 trainings and topics related to child abuse and prevention. It's my pleasure to introduce Sandy to you all today and the amazing information that she's going to be sharing with us regarding child abuse and the detailed resources to support. Sandy?
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I want to lodge a complaint first that I had to follow Nikisha and Tamika because they were great as always. And some of what we're going to talk about today may even overlap a little bit, which is absolutely fine because, you know, the more you hear something, obviously, the more you retain that. But thank you so much for even having us as a part of this. So I am from Prevent Child Abuse Indiana, and our contact information is right on that first slide. So, you know, please feel free to reach out, and if you want more information or more resources, we have lots of stuff on our website, and honestly, we don't have all the answers, so we have lots of good links to other resources on our website. So please feel free to reach out, especially during this time, and we'd be happy to, you know, get you what you need. And if we don't have it, we're going to be happy to direct you to the right place. So again, thanks so much for inviting us to talk to you. We can go on to the next slide. And we always want to give a shout out to Kids First. They are the ones who fund us primarily, and so we always want to give them a big shout out. Their primary focus is the prevention of child maltreatment, so that's what we're all about, and we want to just acknowledge them and always, you know, thank them for their support. Okay, next slide. So I'm sure this is going to be a review for all of you, but I kind of wanted to still hit upon it because there may be some differences right now as we're going through this crisis. And I don't think this is anything that any of us needed to say, but I do want to sort of, you know, preface what I'm going to talk about with, we all understand that we really need to, you know, stay put in order to get through this crisis. So, you know, everything that we're talking about in terms of what we're all worried about in the world of domestic violence and child abuse, we are worried about it. We're worried that, you know, things are happening, you know, behind closed doors, but we also understand that unfortunately during this time, this is what we have to do in order to, you know, hopefully, you know, curb this stem of this virus. So what can we do then, you know, during this time, but also, you know, sort of a call to action that I want you all to be thinking about. What are we going to be able to do once this ends, and it will end, and we're able to, you know, transition back in the community? We really want to start thinking about what kind of plan we're going to have in place for these individuals once we are transitioning back. You know, we want to make sure that, you know, all of that is in place, you know, prior. So sort of a call to action. What can we do now? But, you know, what can we also do, you know, in this time that helps us to understand, okay, we need to have a plan in place for when we do go back in, you know, and are with each other again. So the forms of maltreatment, again, I know this is, you know, a sort of a review for you, but neglect, which is typically the most substantiated form of child maltreatment. I know a lot of people think about physical abuse and sexual abuse because that's what you know, kind of read about, and that's what the media kind of puts out there. But actually neglect is the most substantiated form of child maltreatment. You know, with neglect, it's a failure really just to meet the basic needs of food, clothing, shelter, medical, education, and supervision. So if you think about that umbrella and you think about where we are right now, well, so food, clothing, shelter, medical, education, and supervision. Some of the things that we're concerned about, obviously, is education. You know, are children able to get what they need right now in terms of a learning environment. We've gone to e-learning, which is fine, but what about children who are in communities where there's no internet connection or very little internet connection? So what can we do to support families around that? So the educational piece, supervision. We have been putting out a lot of tips around the supervision issue, because there are still a lot of brave people who are having to go out in the community and work. So we have grocery store clerks, we have pharmacy, we have postal workers, we have utility workers, medical professionals. We still have thousands of people who are having to go out and work. So what is happening in terms of children who are not in school? There are no after school or before school programs. They can't even go to family members' homes in some cases because of risk of infection. So what are we doing to help support families around that? One of the other pieces that we put out is, if you are leaving your child with someone, you need to ensure absolutely that you know that person, that you trust that person, that that individual does not have a history of violence, that that individual doesn't appear to be overly frustrated with your child, because we all get frustrated with our children, so we're not saying that, but somebody who appears to be overly frustrated, or somebody that your child appears to be afraid of. So these are the kinds of things that we're asking people to be aware of. And that's where we're kind of doing a call out to the community and to you all. What can we do to help families during that time? Are there people that we can recommend to them that are trustworthy? There are still some child care facilities open. Typically they're caring for the the first responders children, but there are still some childcare that is open. So what can we do to ensure that's safe and affordable childcare? And this is where we can come in. We can do some of that research for families. We can help families to link to individuals who are safe. But this is a tough one. There aren't easy answers for this one. Because the other piece is, children are probably being left by themselves more often during this time. So what can we do? And when we get to this sort of the prevention list, we can talk about that more, but it's something that we are concerned about. Our children who normally would not have been left by themselves, are they being left by themselves right now more often? And are they children who probably wouldn't be prepared to be left by themselves? So that's more of what we're concerned about. So we're always concerned about neglect anyway, but the supervision issue, the education issue, through no fault of anyone's. If again, if you're in a situation where you don't have internet, where you don't have the technology, what can we do to help support these families during this time? Physical. So especially during this time, Tamika mentioned that they're seeing an increase in domestic violence reports. Well, we're seeing a decrease in reports of child maltreatment, and that is not a good thing, because we're concerned that the individuals who would normally be reporting child maltreatment, like schools, the faith community, before and after school programs, camps, child care facilities, we're concerned that because the children aren't in those environments, that reports are not being made. So we're a bit fearful during this time, and we have heard that the more severe cases of child abuse, that's what's being reported, because they're having to seek medical attention. So we are a little bit more fearful during this time of the seriousness of child maltreatment. Psychological, and I'm glad that question came up with Tamika. Yes, it is just as detrimental, if not more, for children, and especially children who their brains are still developing. So we're really concerned about that piece during this time. So we're probably going to see an uptick of that during, the shelter in place, and the witnessing of domestic violence. So children, they're about, in homes where there's domestic violence, about at least 60% of the time, there are children living in that home as well. So when the perpetrator is perpetrating against the victim and there are children present, that is a form of child maltreatment. It just is, because the trauma of witnessing, unfortunately, children who live in homes where there's domestic violence are 60 times more at risk of being victimized themselves. But again, for us, even witnessing or being in the area where domestic violence is taking place, it is impacting the children. So we are concerned about the psychological impact of that. So sexual abuse, perhaps because the child is now in close proximity to the perpetrator. So, they're with that perpetrator 24/7 now, unfortunately. Plus, even under quote unquote normal circumstances, children, when there's domestic violence, when there's sexual domestic violence, children are witnessing that about 28% of the time. So now with the shelter in place, you can imagine that if there's sexual violence going on in the home, that children are witnessing it, that many, many times more likely to be witnessing that. So also we want to, and again, this is where you all can come in and be a huge help. So I'm going to guess that many children, while they're home now, are online and they're gaming and they're just increasing their online activity. So we want to be sure that they're doing that safely. So please, as you're checking in with your own family, as you're checking in with families, that you're seeing virtually, and I know some of you are still even going into the homes, check in on that and remind parents and caregivers about some of the dangers of that. This sounds really blunt, but perpetrators are home right now also, and they're also sheltering in place, and they're also online and trying to groom children. So really double down with families and ask them, what kind of supervision is taking place. Make sure that they know everyone that their child is gaming with. We especially know this with boys, that this is a risk for human trafficking, for individuals, perpetrators to groom young boys for human trafficking. So, really we want to pay attention to that and urge parents and caregivers to know who, their child is gaming with, and for parents and caregivers to have a talk with their child. And if their child's approached by somebody that they don't know, even if that person is claiming to be another child, that the child needs to come to the caregiver and say, hey, I was approached. So they need to have these conversations. Just another important piece to that. Next slide, please. So if you or someone is virtually working or interacting with children, some of these are going to be the same things that you would be paying attention to, even if you were, working with them in person. It just may be a little bit more challenging. So are you noticing changes in behavior? And when we're talking to, please, remember you wear two hats. You wear your professional hat, but you also wear, your civilian hat. So, when you're checking in with your own family and friends, these are things just to sort of take note of. So changes in behavior. Are children missing? I don't know if any of you are teachers, but some of you may know teachers, so you might want to, get out these tips to them. Are they missing your meetings or teaching time? Do they appear overly tired? And that could be just because right now, and I think Nikisha mentioned this about people not wanting to get out of bed because their schedules are all messed up. So yeah, appearing overly tired. You're not able to reach the family through virtual methods or by the phone. So they've kind of dropped off the planet. And so that can be a red flag. Is the child frequently alone when you're kind of checking in with them? Or are they made to be responsible for other children in the home? So sort of, alluded to that earlier, something to sort of be aware of. Next slide, please. Were you able to go to the next slide?
Looks like there's a bit of a lag. Let me
Oh,
republish.
no, you're
Are you able
fine.
to
You're
see that?
fine. Yep, I sure can, because I know my internet has been kind of weird too. So please make sure Nikisha and Tamika both, sort of stress this. Make sure to check in with the parent and the caregiver. Do they appear overly stressed or frightened? So again, we're concerned about DV during this time too. So with the children, try to ask open-ended questions. So just kind of asking how they're feeling today. Ask if they've eaten. The family may need some resources around food. Just continually reassure the children that you remain a caring and supportive adult. If it's safe, maybe developing a code word or a phrase with the child so that if they say that word or phrase, is there an issue? So maybe even developing something like that. Next slide. So you can indirectly check on a family by asking about their pets. Ask the child if they have a pet, and if they do, engage them in conversation to determine about their pet's welfare. And the reason we do that is we know there's a shared link with pet abuse, child abuse, and domestic violence. So a child or adult may not be willing to talk about their own welfare, but they may give an indication about their pet, and you could explore further if there's a concern. A lot of, and those of you who work with domestic violence, a lot of it is about control. And many perpetrators use the pets to control the victims and the children. About 80% of pet abuse calls come from neighbors. So we urge people who are out there walking, who are out there jogging, who are just out and about. If you notice children and pets outside, pay extra attention. But we do know there is that shared link with pet abuse, child abuse, and domestic violence. So that's another way that we may be able to be checking in on families. And we urge, animal welfare and Department of Child Services to sort of be paying attention for each other because of that link. Next slide. So write the child a letter. I know this seems kind of old school, but if you're not able to get through, or if the internet is not really strong, I bet there are children out there who've never received a letter before. So writing the child a letter or an encouraging message, and include a self-addressed stamped envelope, in case they'd like to write back. And some children, again, have never received a letter, and it's like, oh, what's this? And it can be kind of fun. So again, check in with the parent or caregiver. Do they, appear overly stressed or frightened? And again, ask the child how he or she is feeling. Keep those questions sort of open-ended. We can go on. Yeah, thanks. So maybe trying to spend a little extra time with children whom have perhaps some challenges, so maybe a physical, emotional, or developmental issue. Perhaps that child has a history of being maltreated or is living in a neighborhood which is experiencing violence. So maybe try to carve out a little extra time. And this goes back to what Tamika and Nikisha talked about. You know, you all should be checking in with each other. You're under the same stress as any other parent or caregiver whom you are serving. And I know I'm a volunteer for the Red Cross, so we did a phone tree and we split up a bunch of names and we just called all of the volunteers and we just checked in with everybody to say, hey, how you doing? So maybe do that. If you're a member of a faith community, we've been urging faith community members to do that, just to check in with families, see how they're doing. So maybe you could consider that kind of a phone tree just to check in with each other and ensuring that, you know, you're doing that self-care. Next slide, please. So what can we do right now under these circumstances? We can still join public awareness campaigns and share online resources. You know, the other concern that we sometimes have, especially during this virtual time, is that parents and caregivers are getting their resources, and I put that in air quotes, from places that are probably not good to be getting resources from, and advice that's not really good advice. So we urge you to share online resources with parents and caregivers because we know it's going to come from legitimate resources. And so please share that because we really want parents and caregivers to have that from legitimate places and not, you know, just some chat room that's giving not very good advice. Organize virtual parent fairs or virtual parent support groups. You know, encourage essential workers, and we put that in quotes too, because we think everybody's essential right now, to be more attentive. So we've been encouraging, you know, store clerks to put things at checkout lines. We've been encouraging, you know, our CEO, Sharon Pierce, took some flyers and things and is going to try to give it to food delivery places, so restaurants, with little flyers to give to families as they're delivering food. So, you know, what can we do right now with the individuals? The postal workers, you know, please pay extra attention if you hear or see something of concern. So again, we want to encourage everyone just to be more attentive, and what can we do with the, you know, the places that are still open? What can we do to share resources so that parents and caregivers can have access to that? So I mentioned this before, the sort of the call to action. When, you know, we need to start planning about what we can do, or, you know, planning right now about what we can do when we are, you know, going back into the community. We need to have that plan in place for resources and services for families. We don't want to wait until it happens and then, you know, we're sort of left. We want to have that plan. So what can we do, you know, as we're returning back to the community? Next slide. So just real quick, the Indiana Code, anyone who has reason to believe that a child is a victim of child abuse or neglect must make a report, and anonymous reports are accepted. So again, we really want to get that out there to those who are still out in the community and interacting with families and children. The next slide. And this is about school employees, and really all that is saying is it takes away that designated reporter piece, which now, you know, it wouldn't be happening anyway. So those of you who are working in a sort of school setting, you need to make that report first, then you tell your administrator. So that's a new addition to the code, so we always want to kind of remind people about that. Next slide. You're free from liability. If you make that report in good faith, you're free from liability. So again, you can make an anonymous report anyway, but, you know, just to reassure you, you are free from liability. And that's the reporting number, 1-800-800-5556, 24/7. Next slide. And just some of the resources. I love Tamika's resources. I'm going to steal some of those too, but here's some of the ones that we have. Some of them are similar to Tamika, but some national resources, the DV hotline, National Child Abuse Hotline, DCS, Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Indiana 211. We don't want to forget that because that's sort of that's our statewide resource and link for families who may need, food or shelter, rental assistance. And then Darkness to Light is an organization that works strictly with child sexual abuse prevention, and they also provide lots of good trainings and suggestions around how to keep children safe, from sexual abuse. So I think that's it. If there are any questions, or I really appreciate this opportunity again.
Sandy, we'll give everybody a few minutes to chat in any questions. Some of your fellow panelists, though, had some wonderful comments. Tamika said, Sandy, thanks for bringing up pet abuse. It is actually one of the top reasons why survivors stay with their abusers, because they do not want to lose their pet or fear that for them.
And I think that is so hard. I mean, that just hurts my heart when I hear stuff like that. And I know that more and more shelters are trying to build either additions or extra shelters so that people can take their pets. But yeah, it's heartbreaking.
We've gotten some great comments about thank you, great resources. Colleen Yeagle responds, going to write letters to neighborhood kids this week. Excellent call to action.
Thanks,
Amanda and others have chimed in. Thank you. Sandy, I love the call to action about distributing information to non-traditional resources like delivery from restaurants, delivery for groceries, and so forth. I think that is such a great stakeholder that we traditionally don't think about. And having that collaboration, having that partnership could certainly extend beyond the COVID-19 pandemic to account for more cohesion within the community.
Which hopefully would continue even after we're, hopefully we can make some of these partnerships and continue these partnerships, even after this is over.
Fantastic. Brenda has chatted in a question. Are there any parenting classes online for overburdened parents? Any resources that you know of there, Sandy?
I would go to Prevent Child Abuse America and see the resources they have. Unfortunately, that's why we kind of call the action, that if it's something that we could create ourselves. I have not heard of any. I am trying to use my choice of words wisely here. I know that moms groups are still out there. I have not heard of any official parenting resources, but I would imagine that DCS would know of such a thing. Prevent Child Abuse America, but I have not heard of any official. That's why one of the calls to action was, is that something that we would be able to perhaps do?
I think that's a great local opportunity to provide resources here, understanding the current conditions of the local community. Elaine Trempanier commented, FSSA has organized a virtual online family support group, and she'll send in the link. She's aware it's not a parenting class, but it is a resource. So
that's great. And
yeah.
A lot of people are sort of, when you're Googling that kind of thing, you can definitely Google that, but a lot of people are sort of like going away from the term parent education too. I know that we do, because we want to make sure that we call it more parent resource, so that it may engage more families.
Absolutely. We have time for one more question. Comments are still pouring in about thank you, great information, great resources. All right. Well, it looks like we'll draw that to a close. Sandy, thank you so much. More texting, or rather more chatting in of thank yous and great jobs. So Sandy, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us this wonderful resource tool, and also to really be mindful of children, spouses, partners, just individuals that are in the home sheltering with, that are not necessarily staying at home in the most optimal conditions. So as we draw light to domestic violence, child abuse during this time, the resources here that are posted, please do reach out. I think certainly it's always difficult when we work in community service when we can't resolve the issue immediately. But let's look at this time during COVID-19 as a pandemic to really account for, as we look at new challenges and issues coming about, how can we be as resourceful and as reactive as possible to support those that are at the highest risk. And then as we continue to spend this time being productive during the pandemic, how can we look at new stakeholder collaborations, new partners in the fight against domestic violence and child abuse? And how can we account for ourselves being individually healthy and coping well to account for being that support to others? How can we look at, as Sandy rightfully said, new models? Should we create the curriculums, the resources, the opportunities? And how can those essentially become new evidence-informed or evidence-based models of care within our communities? So Sandy, Mika, Nikisha, thank you all so much for your time today, your great resources, your excellent presentations. Please, audience members, download the handouts. There will be, for those that are interested, a CEU provided by the Indiana University School of Social Work. So we thank the team there, especially Davina Jenny, to support the CEUs. We are going to send out immediately following this webinar a link to the CEUs. That will be 7 questions for you to answer. I have specifically identified the objectives throughout the webinar. And so just a hint, those will be on your CEUs. And for those that are interested, please respond to that CEUs. We will have the collected answers, and then the certification will be sent out through info@techserve.io. There's a couple questions here just from a housekeeping. How do we download the handouts? If you maximize the handout screen and directly hover your mouse over the title of the handout document, you can click on that. That'll automatically open on your computer, and then you can download it and save it to your desktop or any other folders that you prefer. There's a couple other comments I'm just going to read through very quickly, make sure that the details are here. Okay, lots of great jobs, lots of well done, excellent presentations and information. I'm going to just scroll through to see if there's any other questions. Looks like we are all set. We want to additionally thank the Indiana University School of Social Work for providing CEUs, Field Med for their sponsorship of the Minority Health Month webinars, everyone for attending today, and of course, our fantastic speakers this morning. Our next webinar will be on April 21st, next Tuesday at 10 a.m., where we will be discussing social determinants of health in the time of COVID-19. Antoinette, do you want to send us out with a salutation?
Yes, thank you very much again. Thank you to all our speakers. I appreciate each and every one of you. You did a Herculean job. I'm so glad that you took time out of your busy schedules. I want to just also say that there's a lot of different month celebrations going on, and I was reminded by one of the partners that this week is Black Maternal Health Week. And so for different events and more for that, we'll try to send out information to our partners so you can be a part of that. And then also with the ever-changing numbers for the COVID virus, if you do not have that website, coronavirus.in.gov, is where you can get information in regards to testing the latest cases and different things. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, TechServe, the wonderful Sunny and her staff. Thank you to our sponsor. And thank you to you taking time out of your busy schedule. We look forward to seeing you next week. We have an excellent speaker that will be our guest next week. And if you have any questions for Minority Health or anything, feel free to contact us either via by our email, which is inomh@isdh.in.gov. And other than that, you know how to reach us. So, Sunny, thank you for being an extra wonderful commentator as you always are.
Thanks, Antoinette. Thanks, everyone.